Hello students, I am Manisha Raj. I am taking a paper Indian Economic Development since 1947 and we are talking about the concept of economic reforms. In my last lecture we have seen that one of the major aspects of economic reforms was the macroeconomic stabilization, and we have seen what are the important areas which can lead to macroeconomic stabilization. The next important aspect of economic reforms was the structural transformation. This structural transformation basically means that we are transforming our economy from a closed economic zone to an open economic zone, and for that we need to come up with new policies which opens up the economy, and secondly we have to safeguard and protect our open economy against the already developed world so that there is no crisis like situation again in the country. So in order to manage the structural change in the country, certain policies were taken up. The most important among them can be mentioned as such. The first one being, we have to maintain the trade and capital flows within the country. Secondly, we have to see the industrial deregulation process of the country. Third is the financial sector management within the economy, and the fourth is the disinvestment of public sector units. First, I'll talk about the trade and capital flows. Now, what happens that when you open up, you have to have sufficient amount of foreign exchange reserves to trade in international market. So, by that time in 1990s, we were supposed to have $1.2 billion foreign exchange reserves, which would support our import bill. Because whenever you open up into economy and whenever you start trading, what happens that more and more of exports and imports take place within the country. But for a developing country, generally we import more of technology which are more costlier and export simple finished goods which might be lesser costlier. So that way what happens that we have more of trade, but the capital flow is negative. We are paying more for the imports that we have taken up and we get lesser returns on the exports. For this matter, we need to have reserves. So foreign exchange reserves is an important tool that should be maintained by the central bank of the country, so that trade runs smoothly and we always have sufficient reserves to finance our imports. Because imports are generally done for very crucial things of the economy. For example, petroleum is our biggest imports bill. Secondly, could be any machinery, capital, technology, or human resource. So for that matter, you have to see that trade is balanced through the savings that we have, and the savings cannot be only internal, it has to be external as well. So in that case, gold and foreign exchange reserves play an important role. Capital flow for long term has to be maintained positively for them. Okay, the next one is industrial deregulation. This is very simple. With the coming up of the new economic reforms, we had seen that there was privatization. That means private sector was coming up and the public sector was being given up. So more and more stake of private sector was seen in the industrial sector. But the private sector will only be interested in running the new projects or coming up with the industrial aspects of development when it is easy and lesser cumbersome. Because in India, bureaucratic hurdles were one of the most important reasons which did not allow the private sector to flourish in the industrial sector. So for that matter, if you're trying to bring up privatization within the economy, you have to deregularize your industrial sector, wherein you give more and more importance to the initiation of the concept. It is a smooth process to start a business organization within the economy rather than making it very difficult to start a new project within the country. So that was industrial deregulation, wherein you loosen your policies to start new business ventures within the country. The next one is financial regulation. Now when you open up for trade, then there is national trade as well as international trade. Both these aspects have important implications on the economy. But for that you require a sound banking setup and a sound industrial investment setup which helps in the finance of the country. So for that matter, we have been a part of the Basel norms of international standard banking system, and we have been one of the founding members of the Basel norms, and we have also incorporated the basic objectives and guidelines of the Basel norms. For that matter, first of all, the Narasimhan Rao committee was set up in India in 1992, which talked about the capital adequacy ratio and also about the prudential norms of the economy for the banking sector. Now this Narasimhan committee was reset in 1998 to evaluate further the role of capital adequacy and prudential norms in the banking setup. This capital adequacy simply means that the right amount of capital that a bank should have before going into or venturing into an industrial project, or the right amount of capital that has to be maintained by an industrial organization, and it was decided to be 8% for the banks. So 8% of capital adequacy ratio is required for the banks to be maintained so that they can finance the industrial projects, and even if there is a problem in getting the returns back, this 8% capital adequacy reserves will help them to meet their liabilities. The next is prudential norms. Prudential norms basically mean that these are the norms which help in actually understanding the basic major safety requirements which help in having prudential norms, or which help in going for a deal, or which help in financing the industrial sector. So the banks have to maintain their prudent functioning norms so that bankruptcy or the bank failures are reduced to a great extent. So after 1998 financial reforms of Narasimhan committee, we have seen that the financial sector or the banking setup of India has become more strengthened, have become more conscious, and they have become a major player in international market. So we see that so many foreign banks have also coming up in Indian economy. The last thing about this is about the disinvestment. Now if we are talking about industrial deregulation, or if we are talking about privatization, we cannot skip the idea of disinvestment. Already the private sector is lagging behind because major areas have been controlled by the public sector. So this public sector has to take care of the problems of the economy, and that for that matter the government should focus on the developmental objectives and take a back seat in the production activities. How does it take a back seat? For that, disinvestment is a procedure wherein the government disinvests its stake in the public sector and allows the private sector to own that stake in the public sector, so that there is the process of privatization and the government has lesser stake in it. When the government has lesser stake in a business organization, then the private sector is more free to work and earn profits within the organization, as the private sector has always been ready with their entrepreneurial skills as well as their business plans to come and practically make them happen in the economy. So disinvestment was the right policy that was adopted under the guidelines of C. Rangarajan committee, where the private sector was given an opportunity to control stake of the public sector and lead to the structural transformation of the closed economy. The economy was made better, wide open, and private sector was given a greater chance to play an important role, so that we can meet the objectives of economic reforms and move out of the crisis as soon as possible. Thank you.